everyone. Welcome to the Nearshore Podcast. Today we have a really interesting invitee, our first guest on this first episode. His name is Erik Jacobs. He is the co-owner and founder of the Hatch Group. The Hatch Group is a leading U.S. Staffing company that has a strong presence in the U.S. And so he is joining us today and sharing his experience in the staffing business and everything related to that. So thanks a lot, Erik, for your time.
Yep, Diego, great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about who we are and what we've done. I'll do my best to set a nice bar for you. Hopefully, it's a high bar, not a low bar. So, excited to be here, and let's jump in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Hatch Group is known for its success in the U.S. market. Today, we're going to explore several parts of this success, and I want to start with the beginning, of course. Like, you already are a well-established company, but you started at some point. So, can you tell us a bit about the founding story of the company, or what motivated its creation, and the vision behind connecting IT talent to businesses? That it's the core service that you provide at the moment.
Yep, sure. My business partner, Greg Roth, and we were both business development professionals, aka salespeople, at another tech staffing company here in Minneapolis. I had been there for 12 and a half years. He was there for 10 years. It was socialized around the company that the owners were looking to exit. And so Greg and I thought, well, we don't really want to work for somebody else that we don't know. The owners happened to be friends of ours at that time and still are today. And so we made the tough decision that it was probably best if we were proactive in our departure as well. And so in late 2016, we started talking about the idea. And in the summer of 2017, we pulled up stakes and started the Hatch Group. And we had some non-compete issues to wait out. So it was I didn't have one. Greg had one. He had to sit on the sidelines for essentially a year. But I was fortunate enough to not have a non-compete at the time. So I was able to bring most of my book of business with us. And we, in the summer of 2017, the market was good. There were companies actively innovating and buying lots of contract resources. The contract staffing business was what we were focusing on versus perm search. And so we kind of kicked around different business models. We came from a model of originally staffing that started to morph into more of a consulting model. And at the end of our time at the previous place, we had practice areas, we had practice leadership, we had full-time consultants, we had a bit more process. And so some of that stuff was good. And so when we evaluated what we wanted to try to sell as in our own enterprise, we decided to take some of the good stuff that we liked from the previous place. I took some stuff from other places that I'd been prior as well. And so we basically came up with what we thought was a good hybrid model of all of the relationships that we had been selling to really wanted to buy staffing from us, but they didn't want the oversight, governance, and process and rigidity of the consulting model. So what we did is we decided to sell staffing, but we wanted to control quality and not be just what's all too common today in the staffing space is just a volume play. The more resumes you sell, the more interviews you get, the more placements you get. We wanted to be a little bit more selective in who we sent over. And so we started some relationships with some people in the industry that just happened to be independent contractors that we had both known, and asked them if they would unofficially come on board with us, and we would pay them for their time, and they would help do tech screens and pre-sales calls. And so we started down this path of a little bit of staffing on steroids, and we started to have pretty good success with interview to offer ratios. And so the more deals we did, the more excited we got about this thing we were building and the momentum we were getting with better than average interview to offer. And so we eventually solidified that or productized that as what we call IVP internally. And that's now our go-to-market differentiator that we do in the staffing space. And we still have this network of senior level professionals that help us pre-screen talent. They help us do pre-sales work to really get to the bottom of what the end client wants and needs. And we pay those people whether we win or not. And so that's our skin in the game from a process perspective. And over the past few years, our growth, I think, speaks to the success of the model. And so we're real excited about what we're continuing to evolve into. And so that's a little bit about kind of how we started and what we're selling today from just a high level perspective. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing, Erik. That's really interesting. I think our company also started in a similar fashion. They were initially selling software products, doing some basic developments like automation emails, email automation tools, and some CMS, things like that. But the market wasn't there for that. Like that was way past their time. It was not popular anymore. So they started building on top of that initially custom software development business. But once the things started to change, and with the pandemic and all of that, we also started tapping into the staffing business model. So it's actually fairly new for us too. We started in 2020. Before that, we were exclusively product development and custom software development. So we started doing this journey, and we started in the US. So it was a completely new culture, the language. There are several challenges there. So in that case, I would like to ask you for the Hatch Group, do you consider like a specific milestone recently that you want to share with us, something that you're proud of at your company?
There's a number. We're a 7-year-old enterprise at this point. I guess August 1st will be our 7-year birthday. But we've when I look back on our list of accomplishments, Greg and I, it's a pretty cool story. I think it highlights how much opportunity there is in the U.S. to do business, to start businesses. And despite our flaws and some of our warts, it is a pretty amazing country. Greg and I, we each put $5,000 in the corporate checking account to start this thing, and we lived off of our savings for a few months before we started pulling any money out of the company. But with a couple of $5,000 investments, we've built a company that's got 100 employees. We're about a $20 million a year company in revenue. We just opened up a second geographic location this year in the Denver market, which we're real excited about. And we did that without the use of any debt. And then I would say from a public-facing accolade perspective, last year was the third year in a row that we were awarded the Twin City Business Journal Fast 50 Award. We hope to qualify and be on that list again this year. We should be. It's based on last year's numbers, based on my math. But we'll see. Nothing's been announced yet. So we've checked a lot of boxes, and we've got a lot of cool milestones that we've put on our belt, and we've got more to do. We're not done yet. We've got some goals that we set early on. Greg and I did that we have yet to achieve, but we're going to just keep hammering. But that's a short list of things that I think are pretty cool milestones that I'm real proud of anyway, and I know Greg is too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's now you mentioned it that you have zero debt at the company, that you are growing from a couple of people to now over 100 or even more employees. So that's really really interesting and something to be proud of. Honestly, it's really really good. I mean, that's something worth sharing with other people that are starting their business, that they are maybe have some doubts or concerns that are, of course, are normal. A lot of challenges arise. So that's something completely normal that will happen, but they can see the other side of the road, right? Like companies that already went through the hard part and now are growing and creating job opportunities for a lot of people. So related to these challenges that you mentioned, I know that finding talent in IT can be challenging. So in any market, basically, but in the US in particular, what are some of the biggest hurdles that the Hatch Group has faced it in meeting clients' needs, with finding talent and doing staffing in terms of talent availability and skill set?
Yeah, as far as just the domestic market for us, there's basically two sides of that coin. The first side is related to Greg and I's ability to get talent acquisition / recruiting professionals into THG to do recruiting for us. That's been difficult since our inception, really. From 2017 to about 2022, before the Fed started raising interest rates, money was cheap. There were lots of deals being done. The labor market was super hot. It felt like for every candidate we worked with, there were or talked to that candidate. I'm talking internal candidates. That candidate had 3-4 other staffing firms that they could go to. Lots of opportunity. And so we had to figure out ways to differentiate and sweeten the pot internally here for them beyond just compensation. And so we put some mechanisms into place, like a synthetic equity plan that people can qualify for. So we have levers to pull beyond just paying someone a good salary or having a good percentage of payout when it comes to commission. So finding and locking down internal talent has been a challenge from the beginning. And then also in that same vein, once people made the decision to come work for us, finding candidates to do the work and consultants to do the work at our customer locations, that was equally difficult because money was cheap. And as I'm sure you remember in 2019, 2020, 2021, even ripping right through COVID, like money was cheap and companies were able to innovate and spend recklessly. And we all saw how salaries ballooned after COVID. Like I could not believe what some people were getting paid. And the big offenders, I'll pick on them a little bit, but Amazon was rolling out huge dough. Here in Minneapolis, multiple retailers rolling out huge dough to people, and it bloated the compensation levels for talent, and it made it was golden handcuffs for people that got paid well, but it made it really tough to pull them out of companies because some companies couldn't pay those dollars, and so we had to just comb through a lot of folks to try to find those people that were looking for something other than money. And so I would say the big challenge, what caused the biggest challenge really was probably, monetary policy, which led to inflation. And it made securing talent across the board really, really hard. That's obviously, things have softened up and loosened up a little bit. There's a few more people available today, but it's still a relatively tight labor market when it comes to technology. And I don't know, outside of a catastrophic depressionary collapse, I don't know if it's ever going to get to the point where it's upside down for tech talent relative to jobs, at least in the markets that we play in. But I'd say that's been our biggest challenge to date is just finding the people due to the economies at large. So
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, we also saw a lot of changes during the pandemic. As you mentioned, the salaries ballooned. They were like 4 or 5 times what they were making like 1 month before.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so talent was really scarce. Companies in tech were hiring like left and right. They had a lot of people hired, and unfortunately, that also escalated. And I have seen the consequences of that recently. with a lot of layoffs in big tech companies that are affecting a lot of people too. I had a first-hand experience with a lot of people that were really good at their job, that they had a promising career in some big-name companies, but unfortunately they were let go because of layoffs. And companies are like adjusting to this, but still, it's hard still to find right talent for a lot of positions. Like it's got really scarce in a strange way, because there for in one side there is big salaries that are way above what some companies can afford at the moment, mostly startups and smaller companies. And on the other side, there are a lot of layoffs and a lot of uncertainty on the market. So a lot of changes recently that had affected the labor market, as you mentioned it.
Lots of volatility right now, for sure.
Yeah. So coming now to one of the solutions, because of course there are several ways to approach this type of challenges. One of those is nearshore staffing. That's a model that has worked for some companies. In our case, most of our partners are other staffing agencies or a small to medium-sized technology companies that have their own software product, and they need to grow their development capabilities. But of course, they don't have maybe they don't have the access to the talent because the talent is scarce locally, or also they have problems with rates and salary expectations, things of that nature. So my next question will be, for the Hatch Group, a staffing company in the U.S., a well-established company, what was the turning point for you to explore this option for your clients, the nearshore staffing solutions? Like, do you have a specific situation that triggered that for you to be open to explore nearshore staffing as one of the solutions?
Kind of dovetailing to what we just talked about with the challenge of trying to find domestic talent in the U.S. While we struggled to do that, our customers also struggled to do that. And not just find talent, but find talent they could afford. And so most of our customers are in the mid-market space. We don't chase the Fortune 100s often. We really are a mid-market play. We're a relationship-based sell. We're not a volume game by any stretch of the imagination. So we had in 2022, I believe, we had a customer approach us and they said, "Hey, we're trying to find a solution for this ballooning cost that's related to the new bill rates of contractors." Like, they were just out of control, obviously. And well, at least that was the client's perspective, out of control. I'm sure the resources felt differently. They were loving it. But the customer came to us and said, "Hey, we're talking to a firm that has a Latin American play that has been able to get us some talent for cheaper, essentially. And it's not halfway around the globe. We're not real crazy about Europe or India because of time zone challenges. We don't want to subject our business people to that. But we're interested in trying to find a better solution than what the current domestic labor market was offering specifically when it related to cost." And so they're like, "You guys should look at this." And so we were like, from the beginning, we were really a domestic resource play. I love working with people in our markets. They have something to lose. They have roots here. They have relationships here. Things matter more than somebody who is in a different part of the globe. And so we really anchored ourselves to the domestic markets for the most part, but we started to explore it a little bit, and we had a couple of conversations with some firms initially, and we started to get our brain wrapped around this thing, and we pretty quickly realized that there was a market for it, and that it would probably be unwise to just ignore it. And so Greg and I actually took a trip in early 2023, I believe it was, to Mexico City, and we met with a couple of firms and got a sense for their operation. We asked them, all kinds of questions. How do you procure talent? And at that point, we didn't know anything, and we came back more or less blown away at the level of investment, specifically that Mexico was pouring into their universities to churn out more computer science professionals.
Yeah.
And we were also equally blown away with the level of complexity that was required in employing Mexican nationals.
Yeah.
Because we had the initial idea of, well, how hard can it be? Like, they'll probably welcome us, couple of Americans down there. We'll open up shop somewhere in one big city, and we'll be able to lock down a couple of recruiters. We'll go find some talent. We'll put some people to work, and this will be easy. And nope. We realized immediately that we were in the deep end of the pool, and there were relationships and processes in place that there was no way we could navigate successfully initially. And so we started searching for, at that point, aggressively a partner to help us with that. But the catalyst behind that really was a customer that came to us and said, hey, you guys need to check this out. And I'm very happy they did, because if not for that, we would still be probably on the outside looking in. And while the journey is still new for us, I know way more 18 months later than I did 18 months ago. So, but that was how it all started for us, was just because the customer came knocking. So,
Okay. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of challenges still. As you mentioned, we're starting. We have done some recruitment, some placements, but it's a process. So for this, I guess you still have some concerns from your clients. Maybe this client, they were the ones with the initiative and they already had context or experience with Nearshore. But with other clients that maybe you are approaching with this alternative, what are their main concerns? Maybe communication, time zone variation, or what are the main concerns or pain points that you find with them?
I would say it was a little bit of, up until 18 months ago, I didn't know that there was a developing market for technology in Latin America. I was for sure aware of developed markets in India and in Europe, or in Asia and Europe. But I was relatively clueless to what was happening right outside my back door at my southern border. And so I think most of the customers that we've talked to about it, I would say, are more familiar with the Asia and Europe markets. And so it's just a little bit of innocent ignorance. But we have a couple customers that are very familiar with the Latin American market, and they prefer the Latin American market. They prefer it because there's some unique benefits to the Latin American market. And as we sat down and kind of mapped out our initial strategy for it, we wanted to, if we could, kind of productize for our business development professionals the offering a little bit. And we came up with what we call the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are basically 4 key benefits that we believe are unique to working with Latin American resources and doing the nearshore versus the offshore. And those 4 the 4 C's are basically clock, culture, communication, and cost. Clock is, the time zone is awesome. Like, I love being able to fly straight south to Mexico City to meet with somebody and have it be 1 hour off or whatever it is. Maybe it's the same time zone, but it's close. Like, it's there's no jet lag.
Yeah.
There's a high continuity for business. Everybody's working the same hours. The teams get more stuff done. You don't have to have handoffs and handshaking going on. It's just the velocity of business happens faster when you're in the same time zone. I firmly believe there's a velocity of business that can't be matched when everybody's in the same office either. Like, I get the logistics and the ease of working remote, but I'm a believer in you get more stuff done if you're hip to hip with people. So the second one, culture. We found that there's a standardization of work ethic between U.S. domestic resources and those folks working throughout Latin America. The communication thing, there's a high number of Latin American folks that naturally speak the English language, and so there's less language barrier there. and not so much from it's not so much from an explicit vernacular perspective. It's the implied. Latin American tech professionals understand American humor. There's less lost in translation there. We have a lot of the same jokes, a lot of the same inside jokes, and so there's benefits to that as well. And then the cost piece is just it's relatively self-explanatory. There's a lower cost basis for those folks that are coming from Latin America relative to domestic generally. So, but the 4 C's are key for us, and what we communicate to customers to help educate them on why Latin America versus domestic versus Asia versus Europe. So,
Okay. I mean, it's really surprising for me to hear what you mentioned about the culture, like things like internal jokes, the sense of humor between people in the U.S., Canada, to Mexican people, South American people in Colombia, Argentina. I think that also affects a lot the way that we work together, because we can communicate better, not only on a not only on a professional level or a professional situation, but actually in more day-to-day communication, and
yeah.
the way that we write in English, the way that we express
Yep.
our pronunciation, all of that
Yep.
helps with the communication on a daily
Yep.
basis. So it's really
Yep.
interesting to hear that. I haven't considered that myself, like, because of course we are Western culture, right? TV shows, movies, music, all of that affects our perception and our culture. So makes a lot of sense, and it's really interesting for me. So I had another question, but I think it is self-explanatory. Like, how does Nearshore addresses the challenges in the U.S. market? But I think the 4 C's that you mentioned are really, really insightful. I think that answers the questions really easily. And now that you mentioned it, cost, at least for us, for NCTech, we are not completely focused on cost. Is one of the added benefits, but the other ones complement the downsides of maybe not having a cheaper option like in Asia or Eastern Europe, that maybe the rates are lower. But there are some other downsides that you mentioned, like working with people on the other side of the world, having 8 or 12 hours difference, communication problems. There are several things that the geographical distance increases and create these other problems and challenges. So we are like in the middle in terms of rate. We are still more affordable than domestic talent. We are not on the other extreme, like people in Asia, that their cost of living might be lower compared in US dollars. But we are in a good balance between what you mentioned, cost, communication, culture, and in time zone. So
yeah, it comes down to priority at the end of the day for the customer. What does the customer have to have, and what is their priority? And we tend to not focus on cost. Like Greg likes to say, we're not Walmart, but we're not a luxury staffing play either. We want to show great value for our rates that we charge customers. So that's why cost is why I mentioned it number 4, because it's the lesser priority for, generally speaking, for the mid-market space, because it's a relationship-based sell, and why the other 3 rank above that. In my experience, customers care more about the clock, the culture, the communication, than they do about the cost, because everybody knows that if you sacrifice a couple of those things, it doesn't matter what the cost is. When your project is 18 months late, it just, because the communication is poor, like, you're going to spend the money one way or another. So I would rather just be upfront and square about that, and not try to hide behind a shroud of cost savings when I know that it's going to be a longer tail ultimately. So it's just how you want to play it. But we have to be sensitive to what the customers want to, and their reality is their reality. So we do our best to honor that.
That's really insightful. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Of course, cost is important. It's nice to have better operational cost, save some money, but thinking on long-term projects, and long-term relationships and actually solving the problem that the client has, we have to see the whole picture, not only saving them some dollars at the beginning and creating other set of problems in the future. So I
Exactly. There you go.
completely agree with you. So
Yeah,
okay,
it's all
that's
about trade-offs.
yeah, exactly. Trade-offs. Yeah, what you're willing to sacrifice. So, okay, now I see that Nearshore has become more significant to the Hatch Group. I know we're still early in the relationship. We are still working a lot in growing and getting more accounts, more placements in the future. But do you see this Nearshore approach as something worth exploring in the future to continue growing as a company, independently of our partnership between NCTech and the Hatch Group?
No, absolutely. It's going to continue to be a focus for us. I think it's Greg and I were actually talking about this last week. It feels like to me that in about early 2023, mid 2023, when rates started to go up and the displacement of domestic resources started to happen in the form of layoffs and rifts,
Yeah.
that the demand for nearshoring started to decrease a little bit. And our gut tells us that it probably has to do with just a little bit of softening in the domestic labor market. And once the domestic labor market firms back up, that I think we're going to see a resurgence in the nearshore play again, regardless of what happens for resourcing and the stability of the domestic market. I think there's always going to be a market for offshore.
Yeah.
But because nearshore sits in that middle space from a cost perspective, it's a little bit more prone to being pinched out, I think. And that's I think what we're seeing now, why our demand is down. But it's for sure going to be a focus because we have customers that it's a key piece of their strategy, and we're not going to give up that opportunity to help that customer grow that part of their strategy. So yeah, it's gonna remain as a key capability in our book of business. As a matter of fact, on our capability triangle, which is made up of four pieces, we modified that this year on our roadmap document to basically, for the four different buckets of work that we sell, we have three different ways to deliver those buckets of work. We have, of course, remote, which lots of people want. We have on-site, which some people want, and we have nearshore. And so all of our buckets have those three tenants associated with them as far as delivery is concerned. And so that's not going away. And nearshore is here to stay as far as I'm concerned. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that insight. Yeah, I also on the other end of the business as a nearshore provider ourselves, we also saw a decrease during late 2023 and starting 2024. We also saw some slow movements in nearshore requirements, like companies were putting a lot of positions on hold, waiting a little, because things were stabilizing, like the budgets and the salary expectations and all of that were adjusting to these changes in the economy, the elections, all of that affect the economy of the country, of course, and then the way that the companies approach their investments and their expenses in recruitment. So we also noticed that we have seen some resurgence in the second quarter of this year. Like the first quarter was really slow. And starting April, we started seeing some things picking up again with some of our partners, our clients. So yeah, we're really positive that we can still provide this type of solutions for companies. And personally, I think it's a really valid solution. Of course, there is the domestic labor market. There is job opportunities for locals. There are a lot of talent in the U.S., but there are some situations in which, for example, there is no talent or there is no knowledge about a particular technology, or it's really scarce in terms of the people that practice or know about that particular language, development, programming language or development language. So there is also an opportunity to expand the talent pool, not only locally to their geographical location, but actually to people in other countries that maybe are well prepared, that have a lot of previous experiences, that have good communication, and they are looking for an opportunity. So it's a it's a win-win situation for both the company and the candidate. So yeah, I had to agree with that. We are still going to provide nearshore in the near future and for as long as needed. So thank you for sharing that. So we're approaching the end of this first episode. I have just a couple of questions for you. You mentioned it that your market or your go-to market is mid-size, mid-market companies, mid-size companies that have some particular needs. Maybe some of them are already exploring nearshore as a solution. So for these companies, what advice can you give to them? You that already have 18 months on this road, learning about it, learning about Mexico, visiting Mexico, meeting people here. What is the advice or consideration that you want them to hear from you as someone that has the previous experience?
I would say, based on my experience, what I would recommend for anybody that is interested in exploring the nearshore talent delivery game is I would take a two-phase approach. Phase one would basically be to find a local partner like an Ensitech that has two things. One is boots on the ground and knows their particular markets from where they're recruiting from across Latin America. And second, has a great grasp of the legal, of the cultural, of the language, to help navigate and to help carry specifically the ball when it comes to onboarding, offboarding. There's just a lot involved. There's a lot to consider when engaging people in Latin America, and we would not be able to bite that off right away. So our approach is going to be leverage an Ensitech, cut our teeth essentially for a few years, and then at some point we may consider dropping into a market in Latin America somewhere and doing more organic work ourselves. But that's TBD. But I would say take a couple phase approach. Don't jump into the deep end of the pool and try to figure out yourself. It's just the costs associated with making mistakes is just too great. So leverage somebody who's been there, done that, and can help you navigate. That'd be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's really useful, I guess. We are also aware that companies, as they grow, as we help them grow their presence in Latin America, there are some cases in which they're going to be directly engaging with candidates in the future. That's something that we are also really open to having this type of partnerships, because in the long term, everybody benefits. The economy of the country, the partner at the end gets to experience and to have this direct communication with the talent. And we get a really good source of also maybe future referrals, companies that are starting their journey, that need that initial push to dive into the talent and to get to know people from Latin America. I mean, I will add to you that it's one of the biggest experiences for a lot of our partners. Once they get to meet the actual talent, they see what they were missing out, because unfortunately for Latin America, we are not famous or popular in the tech industry. Like, we are not associated with software development in general.
You're a little secret. You're a secret spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So people maybe knows Mexico because of Cancun or other tourist destinations, but not the talent in IT that exists here and that is growing, as you mentioned at the beginning. Yeah, exactly. A lot of companies are investing in more training for their internal resources. The government is investing in education, in university programs and courses and certifications, a lot of things to grow the nearshore market as a whole in the tech industry, and also in other businesses like logistics, and a lot of things that can be done between countries that share the border. So yeah, there is a lot of potential here and in the rest of Latin America. So now finally I have I mean, you already kind of answered that question, but for the Hatch Group, now that it's expanding their nearshore offerings, what other internal factors or capabilities do you see as crucial to develop within the company? You mentioned it at the beginning also that you are learning Spanish. That sounds so really cool, really interesting language. I hope I helped you get a good experience learning about it. If you need help with Spanish, I can be available at any time to chat or discuss. So, what other things are you considering to expand?
Diego's nearshore Spanish tutoring business. Okay.
Yeah,
You might have your first customer.
yeah, definitely. If that helps, I can do it, no problem.
No, I'd say as far as internal capabilities are concerned, there's two, because we have two sides of our business. We have the business development side that goes out and finds the opportunities, and then we have the recruiting side that goes out and finds the talent. So the capabilities that would need to get strengthened and built out to sell more nearshore and to develop that as a core service would essentially, in my brain, include educating our business development and client partners, our business development folks, and AKA client partners, so that they are comfortable selling a nearshore model, that they understand the basic mechanics of how it works. And the more nearshore oriented candidates that business development people interact with and talk to, the more comfortable they're going to get. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg exercise. Yep. And then on the talent acquisition and recruiting side, it's just going to require similar reps. We need the salespeople to bring in jobs to force the recruiters to go out and find that talent. And as we discussed already, our delivery mechanism happens to be Ensitech, and we're very excited about that relationship. And so if we extend that beyond Ensitech and start to have our internal people source internationally through Latin America, that'll have to be a decision that we'll make once demand is there. But if we have a relationship with a customer, there is little that we're going to let stand in our way from helping that customer try to deliver. So we'll figure that out. But I'd say it starts with, at least in my brain, it starts with business development and having those folks on our team drum up the demand and create the demand at our client or within our clients, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, really, really good, really insightful. I appreciate your time, Erik.
Hey, my pleasure.
Those are most of the questions that I want to share with you. I got to learn a lot about the Hatch Group as a company, how you started, the journey that you had to this point. So it's really interesting. I hope a lot of people watching this podcast, this initial episode, get to connect with similar experiences, with similar challenges that you already had. Also, I appreciate you sharing your honest opinion, Nearshore as one of the solutions for your talent requirements and your clients' requirements. That's always valuable for a lot of people to see firsthand. Because me as a salesperson too, I can say whatever I want, right? We can talk that we are the best company, that we do everything right, and that you are going to save millions working with us. But when they hear from the other end, from the partners and the clients, how the experiences had been with the challenges that comes with it, it also helps to have a more realistic approach to their expectations. So in the end, is our idea to be transparent, to be realistic, to let them learn and understand where we are useful and where we are not, because we are not. We understand that maybe there are companies that are not our clients, or that we are not qualified to provide them with a service. Yep. So this helps a lot to set that in a realistic expectation and a realistic scenario. So thanks a lot for the time, Erik. I think
you bet.
This was perfect.
I just say one other piece of advice related to what you were just talking about. It's not all roses. Some of my best business relationships have been driven out of the highest levels of stress, and in some cases, me or my organizations making mistakes. And it's not everybody can have great relationships, and when business is easy and there are no mistakes, it's piece of cake. But
Yeah.
when you have to have your metal tested and when you have to work with your customer to get through conflict or to get through a tough and challenging time, or work with a partner to get through a tough and challenging time, that's where the gold is made. And so I have a business relationship here in town that told me one time they work for Target, and they were talking about their relationship with Target India, and this was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I didn't know at the time that they had been into the relationship for 3, 4 years, and they said, "Oh yeah, it started out real rough, but they made a commitment, and they committed long term, and it was a little bit like a marriage, and so." They weren't going to let the initial bumps in the road dissuade them from establishing and standing up that capability that they now have today. And Target India is a formidable asset for them. And that group of people over there drives a lot of value for Target. So good on them. And in the same spirit of that, like whether you're working with a local partner or you're going to commit to this journey, like, you just got to commit. You got to, as a good buddy of mine says, you got to burn the ship and you got to start swimming for shore. And don't have a contingency plan. Don't have a plan B. Make it happen. Failure's not an option. So that's how we're viewing this, and that's how we view our relationship specifically with you all at Ensitech. And so we'll keep hammering, keep forging.
Okay. Thank you. That really like that final sentence that you mentioned. I will write it down because it's really interesting. Yeah, so, okay, excellent.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here. Glad I could help.
Okay, thank you. I will. This is the end of the first episode of the Nearshore Podcast. Hope we can have more leaders in IT, more people that are willing to participate with us. Thanks again, Erik, and I hope we can keep in touch and grow in this relationship.
Yep, likewise.
Thank you.
All right, take care.